What if I told you that most of the diseases killing Americans today could be dramatically reduced, not with another prescription, but with what's on the end of your fork? Today's guest has spent more than 40 years challenging the way medicine is practiced, and he believes nutrition should be the foundation of healthcare, not an afterthought. Hello, everyone. I'm Eli Marcus, and welcome to the Motivation Show podcast, where we bring you conversations with extraordinary people whose stories and ideas can help you live a happier, healthier, and more successful life. Today, I'm honored to welcome one of the true pioneers of lifestyle medicine, Dr. Michael Klaper. For more than 4 decades, Dr. Klaper has dedicated his career to showing that food isn't just fuel. It can be one of the most powerful forms of medicine. He's lectured to physicians and medical students around the world, inspired thousands of healthcare professionals to rethink how they practice medicine, and helped countless patients improve their health through evidence-based nutrition. Dr. Klaper, it's truly a pleasure to have you on the Motivation Show. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Eli. I appreciate the invitation.
Well, I understand you have an exciting new book called Moving Medicine Forward. What more doctors should know about nutrition and how it can save your life. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Oh my. Well, it's really the culmination of my life's work, and it's the focus of our current mission to reach medical students across the country with the understanding of two important principles. One, the chronic diseases, most of the chronic diseases that they are going to spend their careers treating, no matter what specialty they go into: obesity, high blood pressure, clogged arteries, diabetes, inflammatory diseases. These are not lifetime curses. These are reversible conditions. I wish someone had told me that type 2 diabetes was reversible. I wish someone had told me that high blood pressure is reversible. The students need to understand that these are reversible diseases, and I want them to understand before pharmacosclerosis sets into their brains and they think that drugs and surgery are the only treatment for these diseases. And the second understanding is that what their patients are eating is a key factor about why they're sitting in front of you in those bodies: overweight, hypertensive, atherosclerotic, and insulin resistant and inflamed. But also that a plant strong or plant predominant or plant exclusive diet is the key to reversing these diseases. They need to know that those plant-based meals flooding the tissues meal after meal, day after day, month after month, suppresses inflammation, opens up arteries, and reverses these diseases. And so if every medical student graduated with those two understandings, that these are reversible conditions and a plant-strong diet is the key to reversing them, it would change the face of Western medicine. Every doctor would, the German philosopher Nietzsche said, Goethe said, what you know about, you see. Once you know about something, you start seeing it. And once these students understand this, they start seeing these nutrition-based diseases in every specialty: obstetrics, pediatrics, internal medicine. And it would change Western medicine because they would know what to tell their patients: get on a plant-strong diet. So we're trying to create that quiet bottom-up revolution there. And like Johnny Appleseed, I'm throwing seeds out, these understandings to these young medical minds. It's very gratifying. They're very open to it, very excited about the message.
Well, it's interesting, Dr. Klaper, is a lot of people, I'm a plant strong guy, and a lot of people like to make fun of me. They like to throw in the jabs like, well, how do you get your protein? How do you speak to that?
Oh my, the archetypal question there. But of course, protein deficiency really isn't an issue if you're eating 2 or 3 meals a day on whole plant foods. There's protein in every plant food, and some are especially rich: all the legumes, the beans and peas and chickpeas and lentils and whole grains and nuts and seeds. There's protein in everything. And from your tofu scramble in the morning, or your oatmeal with fruit on it in the morning, and hummus sandwich in the afternoon with a salad and vegetable soup, and your bean chili with rice in the evening, vegetable curries with lentils and beans, etc. It's easy to get your protein needs met, and the biggest animals on the planet, elephants and buffaloes and giraffes, grow to thousands of pounds without ever eating cheeseburgers. The protein is in the plant foods, and that's where we should get it as well. Ask any gorilla. They don't eat meat, and look at the bodies they develop. The protein's in the plant food. Eat whole plant foods, which is a key thing. We're using the term whole food plant-based rather than vegan because you can stuff yourself with vegan Oreos and it's vegan, but it's not healthy, and that way you won't meet your protein needs. But if you're doing this on real whole foods, the foods that you could recognize growing in the garden, the beans and peas and chickpeas, etc., it's easy to get your protein needs met, and not a problem.
Well, Dr. Klaper, I think you're right because I haven't seen any giraffes or elephants pull up to a fast food, drive-in,
I've, ne- I've never had a gorilla in the office saying, "Doc, I can't keep my hands off those Whoppers." It's not happened yet.
That's great. So, Dr. Clapper, was there a moment early in your medical career when you realized that the way medicine was treating chronic disease maybe wasn't enough and that nutrition needed to become part of the solution?
Oh my. It certainly happened to me. I was a resident in anesthesiology at Vancouver General Hospital back in the early 80s. And day after day, I'm putting patients to sleep and watching surgeons open their chest and open the coronary arteries in their heart and pull this yellow, greasy gunk
Mm.
called atherosclerosis out of their arteries. And there are already reports in the medical journals that that stuff is largely the saturated fat and oxidized cholesterol from the animals these people are eating. And second, that a whole food plant-based diet can melt away these plaques and open these arteries up. And my dad died of clogged arteries. My brother died of clogged arteries. I know I've got those genes, and I realized I was going to be on that table if I didn't change my diet. Um, and uh, and finally, and so I adopted a plant-based diet. My body loved it. Within 12 weeks, a 20-pound spare tire of fat melted off my waist. My high blood pressure came down. My high cholesterol came down. Felt great waking up in a nice lean body every day. So I had a key to what was happening physiologically. But then one day on the anesthesia service, there's this dreadfully long 9-hour, 10-hour case with a four-vessel coronary artery bypass and a ventricular aneurysm repair. And it was done very skillfully, but by a surgeon who happened to be very obese at the time. And after this long procedure, that started at 7 in the morning, by 3 in the afternoon, the whole OR team limps down to the cafeteria for lunch. And I'm going behind the surgeon who loads up his tray with a double cheeseburger and a milkshake.
Ooh.
And I think I'm working in a Fellini movie. What does this man think he's been doing for the past 8 hours up in that operating room? We then recovered. The patient had a stormy recovery, and I got a wound infection, a wound dehiscence, and a pulmonary embolus. Finally limped out of the hospital with $1 million bill left behind. And what does he do? First thing, he's a cheeseburger fanatic, man. Anyway, starts eating those fast foods again. And from what I saw in the operating room, and what I saw on the cafeteria line with the surgeon and this patient, modern medicine is not helping anybody. We're perpetuating this cycle of disease spawning. Somebody's got to stand up and say, "Stop! It's the food and how we're living our lives. That's what all this toxicity building up in our tissues is." And let's call the emperor for what he truly is here. Unclothed. It's the food and it's a lifestyle. So I became a life left anesthesia, went back to general practice, started getting my patients on plant-based diets. They experienced the same wonderful changes that I did. Those were able to do it properly. And there's no looking back there. You can't unring the bell. Once you see people get off their blood pressure pills and off their diabetes medications, you go, yes, now I understand what healing is about. And Hippocrates is right. Let food be your medicine. It's so powerful because it can be such a powerful toxin as we're seeing in the 21st century here.
I
So
love that quote from Hippocrates. It was done like over 100 years ago, and unfortunately, we haven't caught up to Hippocrates. But yeah, I
exactly.
mean, let food be thy medicine.
Indeed.
You know.
When I was on the staff at True North Health Center and making rounds on the patient, I had a T-shirt that summed it up. Eat plants and get on with it. Already. Don't quibble over a teaspoon of olive oil and eat a plant-strong diet and take a walk every day and get as much love and laughter in your life as you can. And most of these diseases go away, and you'll stay out of the clutches of people like me. Right.
Yeah. So after more than 4 decades, practicing medicine, why do you feel that now is the right time to write Moving Medicine Forward? What do you hope doctors and the public will take away from this book?
Oh, we want nothing so modest a goal as changing the face and character of Western medicine completely. Um, why is it necessary? Um, I overheard a colleague, another family practice doctor, counseling a patient whose hemoglobin A1C was going up a little bit, and certainly not in diabetic range, but the patient came to the doctor and said, I've been told I'm insulin resistant. And right away, this family doctor, been in practice 20 years, she said, oh, insulin resistant, avoid carbs, man. You want a low carb diet, don't eat those carbs. Those carbs going to raise your blood sugar, you're insulin resistant. That's all. That's all I know. And I cringed. And I withered inside that a experienced family practice colleague would say something so, with all due respect, so ignorant of how the mechanism of insulin resistance works. It's not the carbohydrate, it's the fat she's been eating clogging up her insulin receptors. It's the problem of fat excess, not just sugars. The high sugars are the tail of the dog that results from the insulin receptors clogged up from the fats. And it's for that reason, the stunning nutritional ignorance of my colleagues that is being perpetuated on to the medical students and rattles through the generations of doctors. We've got to interrupt that. The truth is that a low-fat plant-based diet reverses insulin resistance, where a high-fat meat-based one doesn't. So we need to get this information out. So why now? Because that's still being perpetuated. And and how in my book Moving Medicine Forward, chapter 7 is a day in the disease reversal clinic. What a lovely concept. What if you walked in your local teaching hospital and there's all those clinics with the signs sticking out, pediatrics, orthopedics? What if you saw one disease reversal? And you could walk in and they get real about what you're eating and how you're living your life and your sleep and your exercise, etc. And they get you on a program to let your body heal itself. How wonderful, get you off those medications. And in it, I think within the first paragraph, I say the truth is every doctor's office should be a disease reversal clinic. And I encourage the family doctors and the primary care reading this chapter. Here, you can do this in your office. Here's how to reverse these diseases. And we go through diabetes and high blood pressure and various diseases. Here's how you get them off their medications. Deprescribing, what a wonderful concept that's introduced there. So we're looking to change the individual practitioners and med students right away with the book, but also get this information into the heads of the med students. So I want to be in a point in a society where every doctor, at every medical visit for sprained ankles and bladder infection. By the way, how's your diet going? How you get more plant foods in there? What if every doctor asked that at every visit? It would change Western medicine. It would save us trillions of dollars. We'd become a healthy, happy, rich nation. All the money we're not spending in needless health care.
So, Dr. Klaper, would you say that if you had one thing to change about the way medicine is practiced today, you would get people to basically get on that whole food, plant-based diet?
Wow, what would I change? Um, Well, I would certainly pay doctors for doing nutritional counseling. I would pay to educate our colleagues in dietetics. The dietitians have such a key role to play, but they don't understand most of them. There's getting to be more and more plant-aware registered dietitians, bless them. And I urge family care doctors, find out a plant-based dietitian, even in your state. She doesn't have to be in your same city And before you dismiss your patients, I want you to contact Miss Jones, do a telemedicine consultation with her. She'll tell you, talk about what to eat. She'll show you videos. She'll send you handouts. You eat like she's telling you and come back and see me in a month. And see if you're not leaner and healthier. We'll talk about getting you off some of these medications. That's how medicine should be practiced, to bring the plant-aware dietitian onto the primary care treatment team. We've been holding her at arm's length. The dietitian, what is she doing? I'm up in the operating room doing real medicine. But what are you doing up in that operating room, doctor? You're dealing with the infections and the infarctions and the amputations from what your patients are eating. And these are all diseases that many of them could be avoided with a plant-strong diet. The dietitian plays a key role. So I would pay the dietitians well and pay the doctors well for making that connection happen in their clinical practice.
Well, I know you've worked with thousands of patients, and I've followed you for a long time. I know you're a pioneer in this field. Can you tell me maybe one story, even of someone whose life was transformed through nutrition, that still stays with you today?
Oh my. Um, Probably one of the most transformative. I was a young doctor. I'd just gotten into this. This was 1982. I had only been vegan for a year myself. I'm working in an urgent care clinic near Orlando, Florida, to pay the rent and help patients. But in an urgent care clinic in a vacation area, you have patients just coming through on a whirlwind. You don't never see them again.
After they see
Uh,
Mickey Mouse, yep.
Indeed, after they see Mickey Mouse, they go. And I had one gentleman come in with uh, heavy set guy with disturbingly high blood pressure, 190 over 110. And I could tell from what their kids, the burgers their kids were eating in the waiting room there, what his diet was. You could tell by looking at him what his diet was. But this is a dangerous blood pressure. He came in for a cut on his arm there. And so I was a good surgeon and sutured up his laceration, but I couldn't, knowing what I had experienced in the operating room and how my body had changed with a plant-based diet and how my high blood pressure disappeared, I could not say something to these people because I had a steady river of them going through. And so I made up a handout. Here's a day of healthy eating. It was all plant-based, didn't use the V word, but it was low in sodium, of course. And as oatmeal for breakfast and soups and salads and sandwiches for lunch. And I gave them a couple of days of healthy eating. And a little vitamin B12 tablet there. And so on the way out the door, I said, you might want to trim down a bit. Meals like this will help you do that. And we shook hands. And off he went. Never expected to hear from him again. About 6 weeks later, I'm working in the clinic there. The nurse taps me on the shoulder. Doctor, got a phone call. And Doctor, I don't know if you remember me. I'm Jim S. Yes, all right. Yeah, how'd that cut heal up? Oh, yeah, cut healed up fine. I wanted to let you know I've been eating like you said off the sheet here, and I gave him some cookbook recipe reminders or suggestions. He says, well, I've lost darn near 30 pounds and I'm still on blood pressure medicine. I'm standing up and I feel like I'm going to pass out. I'm getting lightheaded and dizzy. I got to lay down. And I said, man, your blood pressure's dropping. I said, yeah. I said, what meds are you on? He told me. I said, cut them in half and call me and take it easy. Don't get up and down suddenly, and call me 3 days from now. He called me, and again, I said, "So how you doing?" He said, "It's still happening. I'm still getting lightheaded." And by then he was on a low dose, and I said, "Stop your medications and call your doctor on Monday and let him know that you're getting lightheaded and had to stop your medicine. They'll know. He'll know why." And because, sir, you do not have the disease high blood pressure anymore. And as soon as I spoke those words, I looked over my shoulder. I thought there'd be a puff of smoke and the ghost of my internal medicine professor. What did you say? Stop his medication, blood pressure medications. Nobody gets off blood pressure medication. These are lifetime medications. Well, I was faced with how wrong that dogma really was. It just shattered, and that ain't necessarily so, like George Gershwin said. And so So I saw this as a reversible disease with a plant-based diet. And the same thing happened with another patient of mine with type 2 diabetes. Suddenly his blood sugar was going down, down, down. Finally, I said, stop your insulin and call your doctor. And so here were these two wonderful teacher patients of mine that showed me that the power of a plant-based diet to reverse these ogres of diseases that every doctor spars with. So how exciting, changed the course of my medical career, changed every diagnosis I made, every treatment plan I recommended, and we want to help other young medical students have that same understanding. So that's why we're doing Moving Medicine Forward. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're contacting medical schools across the country. We are the 50 medical schools that committed to getting 40 hours of medical education into their curricula now. We are riding the herd on them, seeing what they are planning to teach in those medical school curricula. Um, Dr. Zachary Burns, another plant-based physician, and I are continuing our lecturing across the country, but we have people help us arrange these. So we have expenses as a 501c3. If anyone would like to help us by supporting us with a tax-deductible donation, sorry, I had to get that in. I'm sure the show notes are, it'll be in the show notes in your program here.
Well,
So,
I think these are very worthy programs that you're putting forth. I mean, I also kind of grew up with the uh, myth or the thought that, there are certain things that just never are going to resolve itself. And high blood pressure is one of those. And nobody ever taught me, that could be solved. It's like you get your medicine, you take it every day, you stop complaining, you get used to it.
yep.
Bada bong, bada bee, bada bong, right?
Still coming out of those mouths of those doctors as we speak and as they
Yeah.
speak. Yeah.
And so
So
what's
exciting.
the, go ahead, please.
Yeah, no, it's an exciting time to be practicing medicine. It's turning the whole ocean liner in a different direction of disease reversal, health restoration. Yay. It's exciting. Go ahead, sir.
Indeed. Yeah. So what do you think is the biggest myth these days about healthy eating that Americans, still believe and just don't want to give up? And, why is it so dangerous?
Oh my. It's probably still the protein myth. Got to have meat to get protein. Otherwise, it's going to be protein deficient. We're one of those weak, scrawny, puny little vegans. Ask any bodybuilder. I just was with Derek Treesize this weekend. What a magnificent uh, look up root bodybuilding. But his name is Derek Treesize, Tresize. And what a magnificent vegan rippling muscle fella. He is sweet soul too. Anyway, if you haven't seen a movie called The Game Changers to see what vegan athletes can do, it will help dispel your anxiety there. It's probably the protein myth, and that it's expensive, and you spend all day chopping, cooking, and chopping and cutting vegetables, and you're just going to wind up weak and scrawny. And that's the main things we have to overcome now. And so we welcome every vegan athlete, every vegan influencer, every person who sets a good example, saying you don't need to eat the flesh of animals. And then there's that whole other issue about the hundreds of millions of innocent creatures we have in those factory farm sheds, and because we like the way their flesh tastes on a burger bun. That's just, how can we support that any longer? And it's killing the planet, and the kids need to know that those burgers they love are the very thing driving that ecological doom that they're all afraid of. It's the freaking burger on your plate, kids. If the young people stopped eating that stuff, it would change everything as well. And we're certainly in favor of getting that idea out. And that's why podcasts like yours are absolutely fundamental. We don't need another medical study showing plant-based diets lower high blood pressure. We know all that. It's educating the public and getting this generally understood and accepted by the general public. Oh, of course, we can't keep doing that. We used to harpoon whales in the head. Now we say, my God, I can't believe we used to do that. We used to buy and sell black people. My God, I can't believe we used to do that. Well, raising these millions of cows and pigs and chickens to slaughter them and eat them should be one of those. I can't believe we used to do that. It would free us all, including the animals. Yeah,
So I'm going to get challenged on this podcast as I always do.
of course.
And there's recently a doctor that I listened to. And he says that there should not be a one size fits all approach to health and nutrition. Do you think, even though you advocate, plant-based diets, do you think that some people just should be vegetarian, or others should be pescatarian, or others should be keto or carnivore? Do you think that some people's blood
Right.
types just adhere to that?
Yeah. Um, Not from a purely physiologic point of view. You raise a child on a plant-based diet exclusively, they will do fine. They'll grow up lean and healthy and full size and smart. And um, that food stream can be 100% perfectly nourishing. That's not an issue. That said, I hope we have a little time to go into this. What I think we may be seeing people who don't thrive on a plant-based diet, one, they're not really eating the fresh fruits and vegetables and taking their B12 supplements and doing, really what they need to do. They may be junk food vegans and not getting the nutrients they need. But those folks who actually do it well and don't thrive, there might be a couple of reasons. And one is um, as nutrients, muscle-based, especially like carnitine and creatine. We can make our own carnitine and creatine just fine for good muscle movement, and a child growing up as a vegan will do that. But if you've been raised on a flesh-containing diet, like most Americans are, and they're eating carnitine and creatine with every meal, the bacon and eggs for breakfast and the cheeseburger for lunch and chicken for dinner, and there's always carnitine and creatine in their blood for 10, 20, 30 years, their own liver, their own tissue is going to tone down their own production of carnitine ingredient because it's always in the blood. They always just eaten. Well, then if the person goes vegan, now suddenly the carnitine creatine stop. You got to make all your own right now. And most folks are able to gear up their metabolism. There's probably some folks who can gear it up like 80%, they're not quite. And when I say carnitine creatine, I'm not saying go out and take carnitine tablets. This is a shorthand for probably hundreds of related muscle-based nutrients, etc., that are driven by a meat-based diet. Well, now with those suddenly gone, you got to make all your own. There's some folks who might not be able to gear up their metabolism fully. And when they do eat a piece of animal flesh, oh, it puts them over that threshold. Oh, I feel better. I'm a carnivore, vegan, schmegan. But what are we looking at? This is not normal physiology. This is an acquired dependency produced by feeding a flesh-based diet since infancy to a plant-eating hominid child. Yeah, you'll create a dependency on it. And they'll do better with some meat in their diet, but that doesn't mean it's a natural thing. But it is what most people are probably facing who don't thrive. It's probably what we're looking at. So do I begrudge these folks a small piece of animal flesh once or twice a week, medicinal to get? No, I don't. Now, I wouldn't deny a heroin addict their methadone, if it's what they need to get along there. But they should work to start stretching out the interval between those as their diet, gradually
Knock
improves.
yourself out with a bison burger once in a while, but
Yeah,
just don't
well,
do it
but
too
where does it
often.
come from? Here is where those lab-grown meats that don't involve any animal suffering, but do deliver the meat-based nutrients. Yay, that's what they should be eating. It should be going to that very expensive meat should be going to those folks who have a true meat dependency. But for most folks, you can make the transition 100%. And my mouth doesn't water when I go past the Burger King at this point. So I think that yes, and so in a big qualified answer, but yes, there are some folks who may need some meat in their diet, but it's again an induced dependency. But I don't judge anybody. God bless anybody who's working towards a plant-strong diet. If the most of what goes down your gullet grew out of the ground and relatively unprocessed, bless you. If you want to put some animal flesh in there once or twice a week, I'm not going to wag my finger at you, but it does keep the slaughterhouses open. It does keep destroying the soils and the water. But I'd rather once or twice a week than once or twice a day, like most people do at this time.
So one of my health gurus, Dr. Esselstyn, besides you, of course, he talks about the fact that he thinks that most people are walking around with some level of coronary artery disease, even as early in their 20s. And, he talks about staying away from saturated fat. And he particularly talks about oils. And there's not many doctors who actually get into the oil thing. Now, when I talk to people about oils, you see all these signs in restaurants, stay away from this seed oils. All of a sudden, seed oils are the evil thing. But they want to argue their olive oil. They're never going to give up that olive oil. So what's the truth about oil and saturated fat, and how much do we need, and how much should we stay away from it?
Right. Um, Oils taken in large amounts get into the bloodstream quickly, and they can inhibit nitric oxide production of the artery walls. They inhibit blood clotting, get into your insulin receptors, make you more insulin resistant. It's not a natural food. And you shouldn't be pouring cups of olive oil on your salad, think, oh, Mediterranean diet, I'm doing something good for my heart. Because again, it starts creating these adverse effects. But the dose makes the poison, and if a teaspoon of olive oil on your salad and it's sprayed on makes you eat more veggies or more kale, fine. I'm like Dr. McDougall at that point. A pinch of salt, a few drops of sesame oil in a Thai salad dressing, fine. It's not going to really hurt anybody. So as long as you keep it into teaspoon amounts. Dr. Colin Campbell wrote this wonderful book called Whole, WHOLE, and his point is stop obsessing and breaking things down to how much saturated fat in a drop of olive oil and how much vitamin B taken. It's the whole food stream moving through your system, meal after meal, week after week, month after. That's what's going to make a difference. And if once a week there's a teaspoon of olive oil in that whole food stream, it's not going to make any difference. So keep the whole thing healthy and plant-based, and eat plants and get on with it, as my t-shirt used to say.
So many people are,
Sorry.
looking for alternatives to prescription medicines, and there's $1 billion, vitamin industry out there. They're hearing about supplements like 𝐓𝐇𝐄 𝐌𝐎𝐓𝐈𝐕𝐀𝐄𝐥 where, if anywhere, do you think 𝐓𝐓𝐇𝐄 fits into an evidence-based approach to cardiovascular health? And should we spend our money on 𝐓𝐓𝐇𝐄 or simply focus on improving our diet? What advice would you give us, and why?
Well, in this case, I'll jump from Dr. McDougall back to Dr. Esselstyn. A lot depends on who you are. Um, the issue isn't how high is your cholesterol. Yes, 𝐓𝐘 will lower cholesterol levels, but the question is not so much how high is your cholesterol levels, how healthy are your artery walls? Are you forming plaque on those walls or aren't you? And there are some blood tests that can give you some indications, but there's important imaging tests. And the uh, there are blood tests that are like inflammatory markers that when make sure your doctor orders, you can ask them for next time that needle's in your vein for any reason, have them draw a lipid profile with triglycerides, but also inflammatory markers, preferably two of them, high sensitivity CRP, HSCRP, and myeloperoxidase, MPO. Those go up when you've got plaque growing in your artery walls. If those are stone cold negative, ooh, that's nice to see. Okay, but also two other tests, very important. Um, your LP little a, lipoprotein A, the L, capital P, but small a in parentheses. And your ApoB number, ApoB number. What are these two numbers? Um, LP little a can be a real assassin and genetically determined. Generally, 1 out of 5 of us have this. 20% of the general population has this bizarre form of cholesterol, and where naturally produced cholesterol can be used for hormone production and membrane synthesis. This is a renegade assassin form of cholesterol. It injures the artery walls. It burrows in the endothelial lining. It burrows into the artery walls, sets off inflammation. It's pro-inflammatory, and it sets off blood clotting. All the things you don't want to happen. You don't want this stuff in your blood if you can avoid it, but it's said as a gift from your parents if you do have it. Why in the world would the liver make this stuff that's so dangerous? Because it's probably a holdover from Pleistocene caveman days when back then the most common cause of death was getting your leg chomped by a saber-toothed tiger
Mm.
or falling off a cliff and having your bones sticking out and pierce an artery and you bleed to death. In that case, having a substance in your blood that promotes blood clotting and as the infection sets in, that increases inflammation. It would be a survival gene to have that. And so it was great back in ancient times, but pull that into the 21st century, and it's a disaster, an assassin to us, especially in later years. So find out if you've got a high LP little a. And this ApoB, these are all the particles of cholesterol that once your artery wall gets, the endothelium gets damaged, these are all the particles in your blood that can leap in and add to inflammation, plaque formation. And these are particles you can control with diet, with a whole food plant-based diet that is low in saturated fat to help your liver remove them as much as possible. Daily exercise to get more blood flowing through that liver so it takes out cholesterol particles. Um, and some folks with familial cholesterol issues should maybe even be on a low dose statin to really to lower these particles because statins do stabilize plaque. And for I'm getting less opposed to them. They calm down the inflammation in the artery wall and they do reduce the ApoB number. So if your LP little a does injure the endothelial wall, there's just less cholesterol plaque producing particles to jump in there. So do these things, and the odds of forming a plaque in your artery walls goes down, and hopefully you'll start even reducing the ones you have. Finally, so those are all blood tests. Finally, to answer the question, do you have plaque in your artery walls or don't you? You can ask your doctor to order an ultrasound scan of your carotid arteries, and if the walls are pristine and smooth, then relax. You don't have the disease, no matter what those numbers are. You don't have the disease of atherosclerosis. Or questions what's happening in your heart arteries. You can do an MR angiogram, magnetic resonance angiogram, and it's just done. They inject some dye in the back of your vein in the back of your hand there, put you in the MRI scanner and watch it go through your coronary arteries. And if there's plaque in your arteries, the radiologist can see it and call it. If they're all slick and clean and open, again, relax. You don't have the disease. So we and the book says this, you can't be passive consumers of healthcare. Got to ask for what you want, ask and you shall receive, and it really goes quite true when it comes to you and your doctor. And then, so as part of the reason that this book is really good for lay people as well as for doctors to read.
What about the calcium, scoring test? Because
Calcium.
that seems to be the big thing that you walk into every office and there's a
Right.
cardiologist who doesn't send you out for that little
Yeah.
quick scan.
Indeed, and it's embarrassing again. There's so little information gained from this. Well, what is this? Um, when this atherosclerotic plaque is developing in your artery wall, it sets off inflammation, and the inflammation meal after meal keeps going. So after a while, anytime that there's chronic inflammation in the body, you have a tendon rubbing on a bone spur or a kneecap that's rubbing against the bursa. After a while, the body will just calcify, just pack it with calcium and just shut off the inflammation. And that's what's happening in the artery walls, that chronic inflammation. After months and months and years go by, the body says, the heck, with suppressing the inflammation, let's just calcify it. So it packs it full of calcium. And so this is a sign that you did have the inflammatory process of atherosclerosis burning in your artery walls and your body calcified it. That's all that it tells you. Um, how do you interpret it? I went to Gettysburg National Monument at the battlefield years ago, and in the visitor center, there's a diorama of the battle with thousands of little plaster soldiers, half painted blue, half painted gray, and they're in their battle poses with their swords and I said, that's what these calcium flecks are. Where these soldiers are remnants of the battle past. They're not active themselves, but they're signifiers of the battle that did take place there. These calcium flecks are signs of the inflammatory fire that had been burning your artery walls, not now. But it says to the owner of these arteries, you are capable of producing atherosclerotic plaques on a serious level. Get serious about your diet and your lifestyle. That's all. No matter what the number is, if it's over 100, that's the message. Don't repeat it again. It doesn't matter. It never goes down, and you don't want it to. You want that calcium stabilizing those plaques so they don't rupture and set off plaques. And it may continue up for a few months or years. It doesn't matter. It's your body protecting you. Really, don't get another one. Just get Esselstyn's book and start following it. And clean up your diet. And the hidden saturated fats keep your liver from reducing cholesterol. So in the coconut oil and in the vegan baked goods and that kind of stuff, that's where the oil lurks in a plant-based diet, whole foods.
Well, Dr. Klaper, last question, so for someone diagnosed with something like, say, Hashimoto's disease, how much of a difference can nutrition really make? Can dietary changes sometimes reduce the need for medication, or should the patients expect to remain on the medication while using nutrition as part of their treatment plan?
Indeed, Hashimoto is one of these strange conditions, probably has to do with leaky gut. We injure our intestinal lining. Food proteins, especially wheat gluten, can leak out in the bloodstream. We make antibodies against wheat gluten, and they turn out to be attacking the same assortment of molecules on the surface of your thyroid cells. And you get this autoimmune battle in your thyroid gland. And as the battle finally clears, the question is how much damage has been done? How much is your own ability to produce thyroid hormone decreased? If it's just going down a little, people, you should take enough thyroid hormone that your doctor will give you to keep you from going hypothyroid. And you'll know that from your TSH level going up, because that's no fun. It can be really dangerous and you feel very fatigued. So get enough thyroid hormone in however you need to, but it's reasonable to work with your doctor after a year or so after the acute thyroiditis goes away to slowly over months start decreasing your thyroid hormone. And if your TSH doesn't spike up, you're giving your thyroid a chance to wake up and see if you can carry your own thyroid hormone needs on your own there. But if you crash or whatever, then you may be on long-term thyroid replacement. Ask your thyroid with the help of your doctor. Do a tapering program will tell you the truth of it. And with a little luck, you might be able to get off of it completely. Meanwhile, probably you should be avoiding gluten to set off another autoimmune storm. These are folks who really should take gluten avoidance seriously if you truly have had Hashimoto's. And you know that by you have antibodies against your thyroid hormones.
So, to our listeners, if you're enjoying this conversation, I'd really appreciate if you could subscribe free to the Motivation Show. Helps us bring more conversations with extraordinary guests like Dr. Michael Klaper, and you'll never miss a future episode. And go out and get this incredible book, Moving Medicine Forward. It just might save your life. It's that important. Thank you so much for being a guest on our show today, Dr. Klaper.
Thank you, Eli. It was a pleasure. Great questions, by the way. You're a good interviewer. Thank you so much for helping get the word out.